There you Okay, you can go.
All right. Thank you, Diana. And welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining from. And I'm glad to be here and presenting this session for today on UiPath. Little bit about myself. So I started my automation journey. It's been a while. I started somewhere back in 2019, and since then I have been involved with UiPath most of the time. When I at that back in the day when RPA was really starting out and as a buzzword, I did evaluate multiple products and kept doing on for over the years. But I have always found UiPath has always stayed ahead, leading the industry, challenging the boundaries, bringing innovation, and I have seen the product started from when it started with just three products, Studio, Robot, and Orchestrator, and now there's a whole ecosystem of it. So I'm really proud of being part of this community over the years. It's not just in terms of product development, but also in terms of how developers from various backgrounds have come together and helped the product itself to grow, and also in terms of evangelization for UiPath platform. It has been a great experience for myself, and I'm sure others feel the same. And all the folks who are joining or learning the UiPath platform through this series or various other series that Diana and other community members actually conduct from time to time. I'm sure you're getting that feeling at least at some level uh, that this community is a thriving platform for all the developers, technologists, solution architects, you can name it. We all come together sharing our experience and knowledge, not just to spread, but also help new developers to come on board the platform and learn about the tools, to actually bring productivity in their day-to-day life and wherever they work for, right? So that's the overall goal in terms of us spending this time and walking through these programs, and all the base, as Dana mentioned before, all these sessions are based on the learning plan that we have on Academy for associate developers. I'm sure you have gone through this. This is session 7, so I'm sure other presenters have been talking about it. The Academy is a great source for learning. It's available to all of you. Just sign in and just walk through the steps with detailed hands-on sessions with sample programs for you to work through that. So again, that's my experience. From work-wise, I work for Peloton as chief technologist for various government projects, state and local projects, and bringing automation to our existing customers and even for potential customers. So I'm really glad associated with UiPath and the products here. With that being said, I'll take a pause here and let Andre introduce himself. Andre, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andres. I've been working with UiPath for my entire career, basically, since I graduated computer science in college. Very passionate about automation. It's been about 7 years of basically basing my life around UiPath, and I'm very proud to be able to, be involved with the community in this way. And I'm basically just here to answer your questions and let you know Pradeep be the rock star.
Andres is being very humble. He is one of our he's one of our MVPs. I think this is the second year, Andres, for you, right?
That's right.
I had an opportunity to meet him last year, and it was a pleasure meeting and working with so many MVPs. We are not just community supporters, but we are community builders. It also gives us an opportunity for come together, brainstorm ideas, how to take this platform to the next level. So it's a great platform.
Thank you, Pradeep.
All right. Okay, so let's jump in. I'm sure you have gone through, I was going through all the topics that have been covered until now. So this is the Orchestrator platform. Now we are going to talk about today's session about Orchestrator. So as of now, what the agenda you can see here, there are various capabilities we are going to talk through rest of the sessions. And as we go, I'll try to keep it simple and easy to understand because this is the second major part of the overall automation when you are building an automation. The first phase that we have worked up until this time is primarily working with Studio itself. So that's kind of a build phase of the automation process. But now, at this stage, when we are talking about Orchestrator, we are talking about how we manage that automation and how we run those automations. So that's a big chunk of automation process. Uh, when we build a particular automation and put it out there for in a live production environment, that's when actual life of an automation starts. And there are you have to not just you have to nurture and maintain that particular program, but from time to time you have to enhance it and you have to maintain a schedule how we run that automation effectively to make the best use of the resources that we have available. So I'll go through all these steps. There are a lot of concepts here. If someone is going through this for the first time, it will feel like a lot. It will feel like you're just drinking from a fire hose, to be honest. But uh, don't take that as as something that you have to be to fear of, because we'll go take steps slowly. And if you do um, want to revisit, always go back to the academy program. Uh, all these concepts, all these ideas are already laid out very well. So you can definitely go back, revise, go through it, work through the hands-on sessions, hands-on programs, some video demos that will help you to catch up. All right. So that being said, let's jump right in. So we'll first talk about what is a UiPath orchestrator itself. So UiPath Orchestrator is the web platform for maintaining and executing your automations. It sounds very simple, but it's packed with various capabilities, and we'll look at those capabilities as we go down the path. The diagram that you're looking at here, it talks about the overall step of a particular automation once it is built in your studio, how it gets published as a package to the orchestrator, and what are the various components that you need on the orchestrator that you need to configure for that to be working and for that automation to be functional and live in that environment. All right, so uh, let's talk about the steps here. So the first step is the project itself. So we build the project in our studio. Once and developers or citizen developers who are building those projects, they complete the project at this stage. You would have seen a publish option, and I will go through some of the examples also during our session shortly. So once you publish this package or this project, it becomes a package. So project in Studio is nothing but a XAML file, right? Once the project is published, it becomes a NuGet package. That's how it is hosted in Orchestrator. And in order for a package to execute, it has to be mapped to a folder. So there is a concept of folder, which is kind of a logical separation of each uh, project that we have created. We'll talk about how folders come into and what's um, how you define the organization of automation in an within a business. But in terms of for a project to become a process, there are two entities, package and a folder. They both have to be configured. Once that configuration is done, in order for this particular automation to run, the next entity is an unattended robot. I'm sure a brief overview has been already shared with you. What is an attended robot and what is an unattended robot? As the name suggests, unattended robots are execution runtimes that actually work independently based on a particular schedule or a trigger mechanism. Uh, we'll talk about some of those triggers, how we set up those triggers. But essentially, at this time, consider them as a runtime. Once a project is published as a process, Orchestrator is the platform that actually coordinates the package, folder, a combination of the process, and it links with the unattended robot. Unattended robot is connected with the orchestrator and it stays active with a heartbeat mechanism, which is kind of a ping from orchestrator to the unattended robot and vice versa to make sure the unattended robot is connected with the platform. And that is how they communicate with each other when the trigger is set and it's the moment of the automation to kick started. That's when orchestrator sends a signal to unattended robot to start the execution. So it may look a lot here, but let me go to the next steps and then we'll just divide into smaller pieces and we'll go through these steps, how the connection and how the execution will kick off. All right, let's go to the next page. All right, so briefly, I think I touched upon some of these, but main capabilities for Orchestrator is provisioning. When we talk about provisioning, there are various things that we have to provision in Orchestrator. So some we already talked about. When a project gets published, um, it becomes a process, and the process needs to be configured with a folder. So that's your process provisioning. Then you have unattended robot. So you have to provision your unattended robot as well to make sure that it is configured. It has right role-based privileges, and those robots have access and permissions to work on that particular folder. Besides that, you would also need to provision users, not just robot users, but regular standard users as well, to be able to log in and monitor your execution. Then comes control and license distribution. So all the robots, unattended robots or attended robots, they all run behind the scene with a configured license. And that license management is also part of the Orchestrator platform itself. So Orchestrator is doing a lot of activities, not just managing and executing an automation, but also it helps you, provides a mechanism for you to uh, perform administration of the platform. The third one is running automation jobs in unattended mode. Yes, that's definitely one of the primary responsibilities for an orchestrator. Next, automation storage and distribution. So when a project is published as a NuGet package, that gets stored as an automation, and obviously through Orchestrator, we can define and group these automations in multiple folders, in various folders with different permissions around them, and that's where the distribution comes in. Monitoring is another aspect of Orchestrator where you can, so there is a standard dashboard available within Orchestrator platform, which you can use for monitoring purposes. Some simple tasks that you can monitor through, like how many automations have been executed, how many are in progress, if any automations are in suspended state. You can take a look at a high-level overview of it. If there is a further in-depth monitoring and analysis required, then there is a different product for UiPath Insights. That's something can be utilized for that purpose. And last but not the least is interconnectivity, right? So UiPath Orchestrator is a central web server where all the automation, not just the executables, but the runtimes, they all come together, and the orchestrator maintains that link with the unattended robot all the time through the heartbeat. So these are some primary capabilities for orchestrator. We'll look at many other features that are all part of this orchestrator family in terms of making that automation succeed. All right. So as we continue to talk about the orchestrator, right? So the next step in terms of understanding orchestrator are tenants and folders. I think briefly we touched upon folders, how automation processes are mapped to a particular folder. But tenant is another much higher level concept. So you can see that the tabular distribution here, and this deck will also be available for you to take a look at it later on. Uh, but primarily tenant, think about this way, or in an organization, if we look at organization level, there are various different departments within an organization. And if you're talking about automation adoption at an organization level, um, you cannot put all the automations in one single location. You would have different departments within an organization, for example, finance, HR, in sales, right? A production environment, maintenance department for a standard manufacturing unit, manufacturing business, if you're talking about. Similarly, you can talk about any other business. There are different departments. They're all broken into those groups. And each department has their different level of permissions. They have their own unique use cases that requires an automation process. That's where that isolation comes at tenant level, where you can break down an organization into multiple tenants. And these are all logical separations to make sure you can define uh, permissions with the least privilege option rather than providing a blanket permission to all the users to access all different automations across the organization. Until unless there is an administrator, it is not advisable to have that kind of permission. So that's where the concept of tenant comes in. It helps you isolate and define a well-rounded scope around those not just the users, robots, but also processes. The folder is the next level on it. So within a particular tenant, you would want separate folder structures in terms of providing a similar isolation in terms of some of the constituents for an automation like assets, uh, queues. We'll talk about queues and assets shortly. Define different set of triggers or storage buckets. So they all are defined at folder level. So you can see the entities down in the third row here, right? So that provides the examples of where this isolation actually functions. So you define robots at a tenant level, but those robots have permissions on a particular folder, but they are not defined at a folder level. And we'll talk about in much more detail when we start getting into the demo. I'll walk through with each of these sections in the Orchestrator platform so you can tie them together. All right. So organization modeling, I think I already touched upon it. So you can look at the departments, finances, HR, and within each of these departments, you have further breakdown that you can consider as folder structure or folder level breakdown for payroll, claims, reimbursement. Those are just some of the examples that you can look at. And this is just one department. You can model the same structure based on the organization that you are working for, based on the customer that you are serving. You can define that isolation at that level. All right. So let's talk about briefly on some of the orchestrator resources. I think I touched upon some of them. Assets is one of the most used. I think assets and queues are the most used orchestrator resources of all time. In terms of assets, as the name suggests, it means these are some of the configurations for an automation that are defined under assets. Now, think about if any of you are coming from a programming background, you have done programming before, no matter what programming language or construct it may be, there are situations where you have configurations that you don't want to put that in the code itself because those configurations can change from one environment to another environment or from uh, one execution to another execution, right? And these can be just some text-based settings, a Boolean type, or even a credential. Credential is one of the most key asset that we define during an automation. So these are just as simple as they can be just login credential. And as we know, most of the organizations have at least uh, well-defined policies around it that you have to change your password in 90 days, 60 days, depending on the organization that you're serving. So it makes sense to have an external set of configuration where I can define those entities that are not tied to the project itself, to the automation itself, because you don't want to be building and republishing the whole automation when you're changing the credential every 90 days, right? So that's where assets come into picture. You can define these assets at the orchestrator level, and at any point of time, if there is a change or if there is a web URL that your automation has to go and pull some data, and let's say that web URL itself has changed. Maybe a new page you have to go and scan through it, right? So you can use, depending on the use case that you're building, you can use assets um, to your advantage to build that kind of configuration in your automation rather than setting hard-coded values in the automation, which is definitely not recommended at all. Uh, so assets provide you that kind of flexibility where you can use that to your advantage, build assets and leverage that. Because I have built automations where even we ended up creating hundreds of assets just for that reason because we wanted to give that kind of flexibility to the automation and not get into a situation where I have to change the project every time some configuration value changes. It also gives a lot of flexibility to the administrator to maintain it, be able to change that configuration based on the request rather than involving the development team. So if you look at a larger enterprise application where you have development team and operations team and you're working in a DevOps model, uh, setting up your configurations at asset level will really help and make it the whole process much more efficient and fast. Libraries are the second topic. In terms of libraries, if you have done programming, you would relate to it. So it's more like a reusable component. So in terms, you can build your automation and convert that into a library and be able to reuse and be able to leverage that from one automation to another automation. So in essence, it actually expedites your development process. You don't have to rebuild something that has already been built in some other program, right? So rather than just copying a XAML file for login or for PDF encryption, right? You can build simple a library and then you can use that many times across various automations. Now let's move on to queues. Queues are So the definition says that these are containers that can hold an unlimited number of items, storing different type of data. So this is a new concept. Like even if, well, not entirely new, but the way it's provisioned for UiPath automation, it may look like a new concept. So what it does, it primarily provides you a storage where you can define the define the data elements that you are going to iterate over the same automation. So the same automation can run multiple times, and use the data items one after another. So it's kind of in simple terms, think of a for loop, right? So where you go from 1 to 100 and execute the same step 100 times. But here, rather than just a fixed number of iterations, what you have data elements. And we'll look at it. This is one of the very powerful concepts that queues provide. And I, I'm not sure if we have gone through the whole RE framework that UiPath already has. We'll touch upon briefly. I don't think that we'll have a lot of time to go and dig deeper into it, but I'll definitely touch upon it, how RE framework and queues work hand in hand to have to provide your transactional automation capability, where you can build automations in implementing solid principles and um, having the setup execute in a transactional manner. So what does that mean? Having a transactional manner, it means if the process completes, it completes from step one to the last, so end to end, step one to step 100, for example, right? And if anything goes wrong at any point of time, the process will not get partially executed. It will be rolled back, and the automation will actually move on to the next step. So it's a very powerful concept in standard programming languages or in backend process. Essentially, you will implement that with batch processing and have similar kind of concept. But UiPath does it a lot more in a visual and in an efficient way. So we'll talk about that too. The next is storage buckets. Storage buckets, as the name suggests, right? It's a storage and bucket. So both both kind of give it away that this is a feature where you can store objects in form of file objects. So if you're readily referencing a particular document many times, so rather than storing it somewhere else on your on a, let's say, on a system directory, right? On the machine, on the VM where you're running the automation robot, rather than putting it over there, you can just put that in the orchestrator. So it provides you that capability. However, I will caution, do not put like a lot of documents or a very heavy document. That's not the purpose of storage buckets. Storage buckets is not kind of your SharePoint repository where you can upload documents over documents. It's primarily is a storage space to for the automation to leverage, not as a end user to leverage. All right, so this goes in a little bit more business scenarios in terms of how working with queues. So I think I already touched upon it's a large scale automation where you can use queues to iterate through the operations multiple times and also be able to keep track of them, right? So if you have 100 items to work through, after the automation is done, you can look at it, how many were processed successfully, and if there are any items that did not work or failed. So that way you can go and look back into it and take the next steps. Similarly, the storage buckets, because we'll be using a lot these two items from one use case to another use case. All right, so there are some best practices. I think we can come back to this one, but on a very high level, right? We need to make sure that each object is named properly, whether it's your robot or your automation itself. Um, Over time, when we are publishing automations, we actually accumulate older versions of automations uh, for the same. So at some point of time, 3 months, 6 months, whatever the time you define at organization level, to go back and perform cleanup, because in the end, um, it all takes storage space in your orchestrator instance. So you can definitely take care of that. Um, in terms of environment assignment, each package, when it is published to Orchestrator, you can define which folder, which tenant they belong to, and make sure that those are correct from the time it was published. Obviously, that's the next item makes sense. Never ever put your Orchestrator account login as a default or saved into Chrome or other browser that you're using. Uh, Maintain best practices around password management. That will help, not just as a user, but also, especially this is very important if you are the administrator for that account. The next one is pretty interesting. Sometimes people we don't realize it. The trigger time zone must be same as the tenant time zone. So sometimes if you are in a different time zone and your orchestrator instance is set up in a different time zone. For example, if your orchestrator instance is set up in a European zone and you are in US zone, the times will be different because your trigger time zone will not match, and you would have to uh, make that calculation in terms of setting up what time zone it's setting it. The best way is to always request to change your instance to the time zone that you're working on. Primarily, if you are US based, have a US based instance. If you're working in European Union or in India, you get those instances set up accordingly. It will help to simplify things. But if it is not, then always make sure that there is a difference. When you look at the logs, you will see a different time zone. You'll see the different trigger time. So you have to plan accordingly. The next is log levels. So we'll talk about that. This is primarily you set up at automation if you're creating the logging as you go through different steps of the automation itself. So you have to define what level of logs you want, whether it's verbose or summarized or suppressed log levels. And similarly, that will help you in terms of uh, troubleshooting. Um, in various cases in automation, when we are running, there are instances where automation will fail. And if you do not have set up logs properly, it makes the debugging or troubleshooting much more complicated. There are various other features too besides logging, especially if you're doing an unattended robot process. You do have other options like you can record your each unattended robot execution. That actually helps a lot. I have set that up for all of my customers whenever we are running unattended robot. That way we can look at visually at which step the automation got stuck. Sometimes it's password expiration or sometimes some unwarranted pop-up that comes in the browser itself and blocks the automation. So those are some of the things that you can leverage. There is another feature where you can take snapshots for each step for the error step. So that also helps. And we can discuss some of those options, how we can best manage our executions. And maybe in the next session, I think Mukesh is doing the next session for automation methodology. He may also cover some of that. All right, I think we are at the demo stage. All right, so I hope that was not a lot. Um, but even if it is, don't worry. Let's go through some of these examples, and that will definitely help in terms of relating it what I have been talking. All right. So I hope you guys can see my orchestrator screen.
Yes, I can see it.
All right. Thank you, Diana. All right. So once you log into your orchestrator, right? So I'll start with the tenant itself. Before that, let's touch upon this. So you can see this collapsing panel here on the left-hand side. We have some of these features of favorites where you can mark some of your favorite services that you're using most often. So Orchestrator is one of those. There are various other services that are available. So let's say we start with Orchestrator and we look how our Orchestrator is configured. So at Orchestrator level, I'll talk about the tenants first. So we talked about the organization breakdown, right? So we have tenants, um, and we can define multiple tenants. If you do want to do that, you need to go to the admin level. And that can only be done through an admin privilege. So if you have an admin um, role available to your tenant, you can do that. So once you come over here in the tenants, you can see there's a default tenant that I'm just using. But if you want to create additional tenants, only it takes that you can just click on plus. My account is limited to single tenant, but in your enterprise account, you can just click on the plus and it will provide you an option to create multiple tenants. And within a tenant, you have, so let's go back to the tenant level and look at the various properties that we have. And you can see from tenant to folder, we'll talk about that, the differentiation. And we talked about some of that, right? What we can configure at tenant level and what is configured at the robot at the folder level. So tenants, the first thing is robots, where you can set up your attended or unattended robots under robot section. If you want to set up an unattended setup, you can start from here, or you can do that uh, from the admin itself. So from here, you can create either UiPath hosted cloud robots or unattended robots, the self-hosted ones that you can configure on a separate VM. The next one is the folder. So we talked about the folders. Right now, I only have shared folder. I can create another folder if I want to. So let's say I can do a UI demo folder, and it only takes just few clicks. So I provide a name, description is an optional field. I can pick up what package feed we want to use. So default is set up for the tenant package field, but if we want to set up an altogether different package feed for this, we can do that. And this can be, this is a little bit uh, advanced topic for today's discussion. What are package feeds, how we pull data from. But if I do have some time later on, I'll definitely touch upon this. But as far as folder creation is concerned, you can just simply click on it and there it is. And as you can see, the only admin user has access. So I am the administrator on this particular instance, so I would have access here. But if I want to add additional users, I would have to list over. I can always assign additional accounts and groups here. In terms of folder, there are two sections. The standard, or whenever we log into an Orchestrator account, there will be two folders available to you. Shared folder, which is standard, and what it means that any automations published in a shared folder will be accessible to all the users who are assigned here. So primarily it goes through the role-based access. You can see administrator, admin user, admin developer. So under any of these groups, they all have access to shared folder. Whenever you create a new user and you provide the particular role, whether they are automation user, developer, or administrator themselves, they will have access to any automation published under shared folder. So that's where I was talking about, right? This is completely defined. It has role-based permissions, and you can define users here, and even you can create a new group also, a new account group if you want to. From admin, we can create multiple groups and define permissions. These are the standard default groups that are available to us. Similarly, you can configure machines. Uh, what does machines mean? Machines, you can have the template machines or you can have the virtual machine where you can set up your unattended robot to execute. Um, because that's the concept of unattended robot, right? You're trying to set it up on a separate machine so that your own personal device uh, is not blocked during that execution. Then you have another personal workspace. Personal workspace, you can see this is, so you'll see here as personal workspace. Here it will just call as my workspace. Primarily, this is your own personal, I would say, personal instance. So if you use personal environment, right? So if you so think about this is your own uh, logical space where you can create any type of automation that you want to build or you're testing with, and it's completely invisible from anyone else. So this is your own space. You can build and test things the way how you're doing it, and when you're satisfied, it works good as per requirements or whatever use case you're building on. When you're satisfied, you can promote this automation and move it to the expected folder location when you're publishing it. Let me go back to the tenant. There are still a few things we have to talk about. So we talked about monitoring. So remember when we started, right? Orchestrator is a platform to perform monitoring, maintenance, and execution of automation. So monitoring is a big piece of it. This is where you can see the job status. So any job that is running at any point of time, you'll see in running, pending, and the same statuses, right? Anything suspended, resume, terminating, you'll have this runtime, and you'll have job history. And similarly, if you have enough over here, you can see the number of transactions over time and how many executions have happened in last 1 week or so. I think you can change here last hour, last day, last week, last 30 days based on that. You can find out the executions here. Okay. So it provides you an inbuilt dashboard to monitor um, all the automations that you have. And if you see further down here, so this is the main menu for monitoring, right? And inside that, you have excuse me, various other menus here. For example, you have a separate menu for machines, which is kind of powered by UiPath Insight. So you may not have all the details, but you still have some details in terms of you can look at it, how many in last 7 days or last 10 days, what different machines you have provisioned here. You can similarly look at processes, how many processes have been executed. So this is all available to you by default, right? So we don't have to provision or configure anything. We just set up our automation, execute it, and we can always come back here and observe the progress. Similarly, SLAs, license. We'll talk about license. I'll show you where the licenses are. So primarily, this is the whole monitoring section, right? Next is manage access, where we define access for not just for groups and users. So it is broken down into groups, users, robot accounts, any external apps. If we are using an API, then or other apps like Office 365 integration, we can also look at uh, user provisioning here for those. Similarly goes to roles. So these are all default roles. And you can see like solutions administrator is defined at tenant level, but you have folder level permissions as well. And some of these, they all come as default, but you're free to create as many roles as you want to. You can create a tenant role or folder role and be able to configure your automation environment. Next, we talked about machines. So besides our template machines for our for our laptops or our virtual machines where we are executing these automations, you can also use cloud robots, serverless, or the agent service. This is still a new feature that's coming up, so we'll definitely have some later discussions on this. But that's another machine template that's coming up. Let's talk about solutions. So solutions, we talked about what projects and what packages we have. So if we go to packages, we can upload new packages. We can look at tenant level if we have any packages. We can look at different deployments. So it provides you one-stop view for your whole ecosystem of all the automations that you have. You have packages. So in this particular instance, I have these different packages. And you remember, packages are coming up from the project. So when we publish the project, it becomes a package. And that package is essentially not is stored as a NuGet package behind the scene within Orchestrator. And even here, you can see these are the RPA packages. Then you have options. We talked about briefly on libraries. Those are reusable packages. You can create libraries, some agentic process agents. These are again some of the latest features coming out from UiPath. They will be shortly available for general availability. So stay on the lookout for our community platform. There will be a lot of sessions coming up on this too. Then we have APIs, apps, and various other different uh, options inside packages. All right, so we have some auditing options here, and that audit you can perform on a folder level or at the bucket level. Credentials. So when we are talking about credentials at a tenant level, the only type of credentials right now by default Orchestrator supports is Orchestrator database. But you can set up various other credentials or credential vaults. So like Azure Credential Vault or CyberArk, if you're using that. So UiPath provides those connectors that you can leverage that. Webhooks, we'll talk later. And then we have licenses. So this is just an admin overview, how many licenses you have and how many licenses you're using. So I think that's enough for. And there are various other options at a tenant level. You can define non-working days for your whole organization in terms of this will help in terms of setting up holidays and other things that you want when you do not want your automations to run. Create a sample CSV file and upload that. So that will help you set this up. All right, so let's go back to the folder level access. So at folder level, similar dashboard that we looked at a tenant level, there is a similar dashboard here at this stage also that you can look at it for automations, for folder. So how many automations you have? We saw the packages available. Those packages are added here as process. So you have various processes here. Um, Once a process is created, we can create a job that can execute unattended mode with defined trigger on it. So if we have to create a job from a process, we can set that job and we can define a trigger for a particular job. So, and we can go from there. Monitoring very much similar to tenant, but this monitoring is limited to machines, processes, queues only. For a broader tenant level metrics, you have to look at the monitoring at the tenant level. For queues, so you can see I have a couple of queues created here for some examples here. So just define a queue and then we'll look into that, how we create queue and populate that queue. For assets, we talked about assets can be different things. Assets can be a credential for a particular for a particular application that you want to log into, or they can be just a simple application path as a text. Skip business rules. Storage buckets. Storage buckets are pretty standard, just a text file or a document or a PDF, as long as that particular object is being used within an automation. This is not a file storage. This is not a document storage solution. All right, so we'll not talk about testing. That will digress from the core topic for today's session. All right, so that's a high level overview. So let's look at admin. I think that's another important aspect for managing an Orchestrator account. So when we come to an admin, um, so there are two things we'll talk about today, accounts and local groups. So you can create your user accounts, you can invite users. When you click on invite users, the only thing you have to provide is email, a comma separated list, and then you can define what role you want to provide them. Are you onboarding developers, citizen developers, or additional admin users, right? So you can define the set of rule, and those rules will be applied to those users. And we'll look at it once the user is provisioned, how they inherit those licenses. The next is robot account. These are unattended robots, so you can create a robot account that will help you set up an unattended user. And again, these are some of the default that are already available. You can always create a new additional user, local group for setting up another role-based access. All right, so let's go back to the licensing. All right. So similar to account group, this is where you manage your access, but let's look at the licensing. Licensing you have when you look at as an admin, you'll find what licenses you have. Um, as an automation developer, as attended user, these are different various SKUs of licensing. So you'll see how many licenses you have for each category. Similarly for robots and services, the same, you'll have those options available here. And consumables are mostly your integration service, or if you're using document understanding, you'll have uh, your AI units for those. So that gives you some level of information in terms of what licenses you have. If you see like here, out of two, I have one license in use currently. So you can look at that and find that information here. All right, I think we have spent enough time on the admin dashboard. There are various other things. We cannot go over all of them uh, because of limitation in time. But what I wanted to go next is primarily show you a couple of examples. All right, let me open this. Give me a moment. So while I'm launching it, Andre, are there any questions that we can take up at this time?
Actually, Pradeep, there are a couple of questions for me that I'm just going to respond to. One is, what's after this course? So after you do the self-paced training, after you go through all the exercises, you'll get a badge from UiPath that you have completed the courseware, and that is the most important thing you can do. Once you have that, we can move forward with what are the next steps, what are the certifications. That's why I'm hosting a separate session that I will let you guys know about with Rivathi. That'll be in April. But it's so important that you just keep focused on getting your digital credential, because if you get that, that is the best step forward you can do at this point. So that's the answer to that one. And then everybody keeps asking about vouchers. I can get you vouchers if you can complete the training, I believe. So what I want you to do again is focus on the training, because a lot of times people will ask for vouchers and they don't finish the training, so it's kind of useless. What I need you to do is focus on that. We're going to take a survey to see when you've completed that training, and then I will work on the certification piece and the next steps of it with Rivathi. We have planned a scheduled event. So again, just please, I know you guys have a lot to do. There's a lot of self-paced training out there. I just gave you like 6 more modules today. So just focus on that. You guys, I will put my email address in the chat, just to make sure that you have all my information if you want to reach out to me about that. And then did you have any other questions, Andres, that you need help with?
I think I've been tackling them one at a time, everything they've put
Yeah,
on
I'm
there, but
seeing that. Perfect.
if you guys have any more
Yep.
questions, I'd be happy to
Okay, great.
keep typing away here. I'm having fun.
Yeah,
All right,
I think we're
perfect.
good.
Okay, so let's take an example. Okay, so we have an Acme website. We'll look into this very simple example. What it will do, it will create, we'll log into a portal. So Acme Test UiPath.com is a test portal. If you have I'm sure you may have encountered that during last 6 sessions in some of the other courses. We use that particular uh, web application for performing a lot of test use cases. So use that. So this automation will use that. It will go through, it will log in through the portal, and it will extract elements from the work items from the Acme test portal, and then it will create a queue. So this is what we talked about, that we want to queue, we want to use queues for the automation, and then be able to see what the next step is. So I'm just making sure. Yeah, okay. So this is using Acme queue. Okay, so that's good. I think I need to check one more thing. Should be a shared. All right. So let's first run this automation, and then we'll go through step by step. It shouldn't take much time. So let's see where it is pulling from. Bring it here. All right, so it does log in, and then it goes through. Do I have to log out? Sometimes if I'm already logged in, that okay, there it is. So we'll look at the queue items, and in a lot of cases you will have either other source of information in form of a spreadsheet or a database where you can pull that information from and be able to y- create a queue, and afterward the next step of the process will actually use that queue to perform the next steps. If you remember, queues are a very efficient way. It's kind of a list item to build the objects or build the data set for us to run our automation. So that's the primary purpose of queue. And with that concept, we are able to build transactional automation where we can make sure that each object or each element gets processed. And if for any reason it gets stuck or logged, my whole automation doesn't crash, right? It moves on to the next object and be able to continue the whole process. We can always come back and later on look at it uh, where we are or what errors we need to, if there are any errors, what are the steps we need to perform to resolve them. It's still running. It's creating queues for each of those objects that it just extracted. So it took a couple of minutes, but the process is complete. So let's take a look at the queues. The queue for this is Acme queue. And do we have the list here? And there it is. So it pulled out information from the Acme website and created these elements. So you can see this work item ID, work item type, and status is open. So this is just one simple example that it scanned through the work items page from the Acme, and what it did, it pulled out. So for example, if you're creating a robot, right? And we have this list of work items that needs to be done. So that's what this automation did. It pulled all the information and uploaded here for as a queue item. So what it does now, the next step of the automation can pick each of these item one at a time and perform certain set of operations and be able to complete them. And that way, when you come back, the status will, from new, it will be updated to complete or in progress or failed or whatever the status may be. So that's just a very simple example for queues. As you can see here, it will show you how many remaining queue items are here, how much time it took, and how many have been successful or failure. Similar to this second queue, you can see here how much time it took, how many were successful, and if there are any exceptions or not. And if because of any reason, if your automation did not complete end to end, you still have some remaining queues. The beauty of this queue implementation is that the next time when you run this automation again, it will pick up the queue items that are still remaining or they are in a new status. So there it will not go back and start processing the ones that are already being processed. So that's one example for working with queue. Similarly, I have another example I think that's going to make. So there is a concept for RE framework. So RE framework is primarily robotic enterprise framework. What it does, it provides you options or a so it's a framework, it's a built-in framework provided through UiPath as one of the templates for building enterprise automation. And uh, the automation has two steps.
Did we lose Pradeep?
Can you guys hear me?
There you
Yeah, we
are.
can hear you. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got disconnected for a second.
You
Right.
did, but you're back.
Okay. Yeah, it's no part of me. I think there was, I don't know what happened. All right, can you guys see my screen?
No,
Yes.
we just see you right now.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Okay. All right. So I don't know where I got disconnected, but I was talking about the RE framework. So RE framework is enterprise framework for building robust transactional based automation programs. So it has two steps primarily, a dispatcher process and an execution or processor robot. So dispatcher does something similar to what the previous example did, which is primarily pulling out set of data and create a queue. And the processor is responsible for the next step, which is picking up each of those data elements and execute them. So this is just one of the examples that I have. Um, so what it does, it actually uses one of the applications from a UI app. So this is another example that UiPath has a UI banking app. So this will just take that example and run through a series of steps to perform that, and that way you can create your automation into two independent steps. The benefit of this mode of automation development is that you can scale each of those operations, like whether you're creating a dispatcher process or the execution process, you can scale each of them if you want, you can set up multiple robots. If you have a large volume of process that you have to go through, and they are independent to each other, and just because one process fails, it does not block the next set of automation. You can still continue and process rest of the queue items. So this is just one example. I'll share that. And the this framework that you're seeing here as part of RE framework, the only sections that we have to build primarily is the automation logic that you have to develop. But the rest of the components like framework pieces, these are all part of the framework itself. So it provides you a very well-defined template to build your automation, which is already including logging, exception handling, best practices in the automation itself. It also provides you tests where you can define some standard tests, but you can add your own test uh, automation in order for this. When you're building an enterprise automation, you can advance it, and you can use the test automation capability to run your tests as well on this. All right, so let me run this. So essentially what this process will do, this process will launch a UI app and go through a series of executions, be able to run that and go from there. And we have configured these as part of the credential itself. So the demo application path is set up as one of the credential assets. It's opening on my other screen. Um, oh boy. All right. Okay, so this got distracted because I was trying to pull the app on my sharing screen. So let me run this again. Pause it here. So essentially, what it did, since I'm sharing my screen, the app opened on the other monitor. So there are two steps in terms of, so we used credential objects, we used a simple text. Um, Okay, so you can see this is a UiPath banking app. It's a standard app that you can use to build your automation, test different use cases. So that's what this is using, and entering data from the queue items that are created. And it's going through the transaction. So I have around 200 some transactions. Let's go back and take a look at it. All right. Maybe I have to pause it. Sometimes, okay. Hold on. Let's see what I can do. Okay, so I had to pause it. So if you see here, these are 285 remaining items were to be completed. If I refresh this, this is 287. So right now, two in progress, 19 successful. So from 285 to 278, we did process around 7. There are 2 still in progress. So this is what the queue items help us in terms of building out. So you can look into the details for each of these data elements that are in new. So this is a new status. I can do a filter from status. I can say in progress, and I can take a look at it, which particular automation or queue items are in progress, which robot executed that, how much time it's taking. So these are in progress, so they are still working. Similarly, I can look at the ones that are successful. So it provides me enough detail for each of these data elements to look at in detail. If there are any abandoned or failed process, you can even find the updates. I don't think anything is failed here. So let's look at some more detail on the success ones. So if there is anything failed here, you can click on view details and you'll be able to see the steps that have been performed. And if there is an exception, you'll be able to see details about that. There are no comments here, but as an admin user for failed transactions, you can maintain that information here, update comment for a reason why a particular automation or particular queue item did not go successfully. So you can maintain that here. And the history just shows right at what point of time the queue item was created. So queue item is created as a new. When a robot picks up that automation item, it goes to in progress state, and when it's complete, it goes through successful. So you have the whole chronological history of each individual queue item to work through. So that's what I was talking about. The queue process is the uh, is 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 kind of the base uh, for building out transactional systems. So any business operation, when you're performing, you're trying to build a transactional automation process. So you should always be using robotic enterprise framework that is, and you can customize that too. It's a fully customizable template. A lot of us have already done that for our various different organizations. There are steps that may not seem relevant to you, so you can feel free to take them out. But that's what helps in terms of building our automations and having them set up, run as an unattended robot, unattended automation, and leverage the full capacity or full features from Orchestrator. I know there were a few things that were rushed because we had to go through a lot of content for orchestration. That's where I will recommend you to go back and look at the training material for on UiPath Academy for associate developers that Diana has already shared before, and be able to go through each of these sections and just kind of use that, take pick up the examples that are out there, build it out. There is no other better way to learn rather than building it yourself. And yeah, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us through the community chapter, and we'll be glad to answer any of those. I want to leave few minutes for Diana or Revati to provide any other updates or to go through rest of the content. Diana?
Yeah, I think, like you said, Pradeep, this recording will be available tomorrow. And so just make sure that you guys grab that and make sure you grab all the information in the chat. That's where all the links are stored. So just grab that so you know where to go to get that recording. And then as you go through this, you can work through it through the exercises that you're doing in the self-paced study. And of course, we're always available on the forum if you have any questions. So just reach out to us there. And again, we'll be doing a quiz on Friday or this Wednesday. That'll be our last session for this series. And then I will also let you know about one additional meeting that I'm going to set up, and that's really called an open office, where you guys can ask us face to face any questions. And then we're going to talk a little bit about next steps. You know, what you do after you complete the course. So that should be coming in April, pretty soon. And we'll let you know about that on Wednesday as well. And that's all I have right now, Pradeep.
All right. Andres, any questions? Anything from chat that's interesting to share?
Nothing in particular. I mean, I shouted out the macOS dev dives that's going to go on this week. If anyone wants to get into some cross-platform development, and I put some links in there for some resources about Solutions Manager and Orchestrator Manager, which I think would be interesting if you wanted to deep dive into this. But I would just focus on
Yeah.
finishing the associate's training and getting that cert.
Yeah, and while
Yeah.
you're thinking about things happening this week, just a call out to UiPath is really getting ready to launch Agentic, and they're actually launching it tomorrow. So if you go to uipath.com, there's a Agentic Summit happening tomorrow. And even, you know, if you just want to get on the ground level of what's happening at UiPath, I would suggest you attend this or at least link into it. It's should be quite the start to something pretty exciting here at UiPath. So make sure that you guys check that out as well.
Yep, I just dropped the link for that
Yeah,
in the
thanks.
chat.
Perfect.
Yeah, there's Agentic is going to be the theme for rest of the year. South California chapter is also, I think, going to kick off earlier. I think on Wednesday or Thursday of this week, we'll have a couple of sessions. We'll start from there. So, yeah, but before you log off from today's session, go back to Academy, take a look at that. There are I think there are two sessions on that for Orchestrator overview and working with the Orchestrator resources. There are two modules, um, and they are pretty comprehensive with hands-on sessions that you can work through. I know there is a lot on Orchestrator. Some of the things I didn't touch because of time constraint. Uh, but at this time, I think going through associate developer, uh, just stay focused with that. And yeah, we all are available on the UiPath forum. If you want to reach out, feel free to do that, or through the community page itself, you can reach out to one of us if you have any difficulty in terms of going through the modules or have any other follow-up questions. Revati, do you have anything else to add?
Not especially, just make sure that you all go through the learning plan and try to be in pace with the series as such. But I would also urge you that no, we do have a follow-up session later to tomorrow. Like the last session is on Wednesday, and later to that we will be having, as Diana said, there's a follow-up office session that we have in May. So I would urge all of you to participate there as well. Bring in your questions, and we would be sharing the survey to you probably by Wednesday, the last session. Give your inputs on all your progress, how it's going for you all, so that we can help you out all in getting the completion badge. That's all about. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Pradeep, so much for presenting today, and Andres for helping with chat. And we will see you guys on Wednesday. Thank you for joining.
All right, thank you. All the best, everyone.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you, Andres. Bye.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Pradeep,
Bye,
so much.
everyone.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining, guys. Bye bye.
Thanks.